I think it is there. Thank you, Christina. It's all yours.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks.
Natalia, for that introduction. As Natalia said, I'm Christina Gifford, and I'm going to be presenting the first half of the workshop, followed by Katie Erlmaz. I'm going to begin today's presentation by giving you an overview of who we are here at Elsevier. Then we're going to discuss why people should publish a book by looking at the use and benefits of books content that it brings to the researcher community and how that content is delivered on our Science Direct platform. Next, I'm going to give you some insight into how we determine what we're going to publish and how we create our content acquisition strategy and our current publishing priorities. Katie's then going to take you through the book publishing cycle, show you what a book proposal form looks like, what types of information needs to be included in those forms, and the steps involved from initial submission of the book proposal through to the actual publication of the work. She's then going to discuss some critical issues in publishing, such as ethical behavior, author-editor responsibilities, and plagiarism. And then she'll preview some of our initiatives for content transformation, including our new authoring platform, ELSA. Then she'll present a case study so you can see what a successful book looks like and walk you through the process of how it was decided to publish on the topic, how the authors were identified, and how we determine the success of that title. And we're going to conclude with her presenting a brief overview of the current publications by Egyptian authors and editors and what the output looks like in the various topic areas and fields of science throughout Egypt. So here's the poll. We'd like to start with just getting a sense of what field of research our participants are, our viewers are in. So if you could mark whether it's health sciences, life sciences, physical sciences, engineering, material science, social sciences, or if there's another topic area that you do your research, that would be really helpful for us. And we'll give you a minute to make your selections. And Natalia, are the selections coming through? I don't see any.
Yes, they will only show when I end the polling. So please, Christina, if you could let me know. Yeah, no, it's okay. Yep. Just let me know whenever I should end it, so I could launch the results.
I think let's see where everybody is, and
absolutely. We have right now, 31 votes out of 49. So yeah, like 63% of the votes.
Okay.
Excellent. So I'm gonna end it right now, and I'm gonna share results. There it is. Yeah.
Excellent. Wonderful. So this will just help Katie and I to have a sense of who you are and what your interests and also capture it for later. So thank you for taking that.
Excellent.
So Elsevier, who are we? Elsevier is a leader in information and analytics for customers across the global research and health ecosystems. Well, that's a really great mission. There's a lot of work behind the scenes that make that a reality. And I want to take this time to just touch on 5 of Elsevier's initiatives. The first is corporate responsibility, and we're really proud of our unique contributions to sustainability development in partnership with our global research and health communities. So we combine our unique insights and content, data, and analytics with the networks and expertise of our partners, and we're able to achieve progress in this area. And we'll talk about that later in the presentation. In addition, open science. We partner with the research community to empower and support open science for a more inclusive and collaborative and transparent world of research. Partnerships, we work with partners to develop new approaches to big challenges, and this includes partnering yearly in up to 70 research collaborations and internal research projects. And our research collaboration portal links hundreds of research articles, media, and reports which Elsevier has co-developed and shared. We also have the International Center for the Study of Research, and the ICSR is The mission of it is to further the study of research and contribute to the evidence base, supporting the practice of research strategy, evaluation, and policy. And finally, Inclusion and Diversity Board. This board addresses the gender imbalance in academic research, and as a global research leader in research information, analytics, and scientific publishing, Elsevier strives to make an impact in combating current inequalities. So Elsevier is large. It employs over 8,000 people across the globe and has multiple divisions. Here's an illustration of the 5 of those divisions. The first is R&D Solutions, and this group provides high quality tools that deliver technical data, analytics, and technology to shorten the distance between discovery and impact. It serves industries throughout pharma and life sciences, chemicals and materials, oil and gas, education, and research and engineering. Next is our Clinical Solutions group. This group helps deliver better outcomes for patients, supporting health executives, nurses, physicians, and pharmacists. Next is Research Intelligence. This group provides actionable insights from quality data and analytical solutions to achieve research goals, including strategy, management, impact, and engagement. Next is Education. This group works to improve tomorrow's healthcare by empowering today's educators and students. Elsevier supports students, faculty, and librarians across the medical and nursing education curriculum, and through its work with leading authors and editors in their specific fields. And finally, research platforms. And Elsevier's cross-discipline platforms support the entire research journey, enables research and career management, and empowers users to make an even greater impact in their field. And this includes platforms like Mendeley and Science Direct that are part of this cross-discipline platform that supports this research journey. And we're going to concentrate on the research platforms group for the remainder of the presentation, specifically research reference books, which is the areas that Katie and I work in. So Elsevier's strategy and solutions are based on end users' needs, and research is increasingly complex and demanding, and Elsevier recognizes this and spends a lot of time partnering and working with its customers and users to really understand what their needs are. And so as a result, Elsevier is investing in solutions to help those researchers, teachers, and students to work faster and more flexibly, and to more effectively discover, use, and communicate that information, data, and results, transforming that workflow and enabling them to focus more on what they want and need to focus on. So we're going to start with a difference, looking at the difference between journals and book content. And both books and journals provide different types of content, but it's this very reason that they're fundamentally interlinked. So journal articles content provides depth in growing disciplines. It's specialized knowledge, very narrowly focused, extreme depth of coverage on a specific topic, and includes that very latest research and new results. While book content provides a breadth in connecting disciplines together, gives a broad view of the topics, expert opinions can be included on multiple foundational topics, and the complexity of differing opinions can all be collated in one source. Books have the ability to provide related fields, methods, and materials all in one place. And so all of this is equally important to researchers and students. So what does that mean? Very simply, that researchers and students need both types of this content to build their complete knowledge of a topic area. So here's our second poll, and we wanted to find out from you, what are the biggest problems you face in your current work? Is it time, funding, data, or lack of access to data, keeping up to date with the latest research and clinical work, information overload, getting up to speed on new areas, including interdisciplinary areas, or communicating with interdisciplinary teams and trying to identify people to work with. So we'll give you a moment to answer that. And these are all questions that we put regularly to our customers as well, trying to get that feedback of where your pain points are in your workflow. So how are we tracking, Natalia, for our...
Yes, We are 50% are answering, 56, almost 60% is answered. Maybe just a few seconds. All right, I think, well, 65% are voting. Almost there.
Everybody, another
yeah,
5 seconds.
70%. Almost there. Okay. Yeah, I think that the answers are quite steady to a certain item. So I'm just gonna end the polling right now and launch the results.
Terrific. Thank you. Oh, so funding is way up there. And we do have resources to help people identify funding sources, but I see also time. Time is definitely a trend that we see among the people that we interview as well. 6% keeping up with the latest research, getting up to speed in new areas, lack of access to data. That is another area that we definitely see a lot of issues with. So thank you so much for taking that survey. So now let's dive into our surveys that we've conducted, and we found that 78% of researchers do interdisciplinary research. And because of this, they need that foundational information for an understanding of the areas outside of their normal day-to-day research. And books provide that breadth of content in connecting those disciplines together. In the same survey that we ran, where respondents stated that they search for answers, not content types or formats. So researchers and students don't care if the answer to their questions came from a book or a journal article, they just want answers. So this means that they willingly co-use the journals and books together. And although print is still really important format for book content, the book is continuously transforming, and people are accessing and interacting with those books in a very different and unique way, whether it's on your computer, your Kindle, your iPhone. People want to have access to their books and content whenever and wherever they need it. And globally, there are a range of expectations from the book. Users may read a book from cover to cover or focus in on a chapter or a snippet, and user expectations have transformed the way the book has evolved, and users now expect an integrated and seamless integration of reference and primary literature across disciplines to address their questions where they are in that workflow. And technology is really enabling that and driving that forward. The book is a packaging option, and we're designing our products and content to really serve all use cases, so that package looks much different today. So within research reference, there are many different needs and consequently many different types of content that Elsevier publishes. This pyramid shows the types of content our books and journals provide and how the varying types of content might be used in research or learning. We regard this as the knowledge repository from which we learn. At the bottom, you'll see the major reference works, and they're positioned, they provide comprehensive foundational introductions to disciplinaries and are presented as encyclopedias, and often early career researchers and students use these materials. If you go next up are textbooks, and these provide pedagogical examination of a subject area's concepts and methods, and they provide the knowledge required within a discipline. Above the textbooks are handbooks, which compile data sets, methods, processes, or techniques specific to a particular field. Next are monographs and single volume references, which Katie and I focus on, which include authored and edited books. And these titles are comprehensive. They show advanced and detailed descriptions for in-depth coverage of specific subject areas. Next up would be serials, which are highly cited publications that offer in-depth look at the latest developments in a particular field. And at the top of the pyramid are our journal review articles and primary research, which students and researchers use to understand the most recent advances. So all of these formats work together to answer questions researchers and students have. And for the research reference books division, we publish over 1,200 titles annually from 200 team members located in offices around the world. And we currently have over 38,000 books available on Science Direct, as well as many other third-party channels. So books on Science Direct have the highest relative citation impact among all the major publishers in Scopus at 2.1. And that's a nice statistic, but you may be wondering, with all that content out there, like, how is my book content going to be found? And one of the keys to that is discoverability in the tools that we have on Science Direct topic pages. Topic pages are generated using automated technology for information extraction. It supplies natural language processing and AI techniques to published content, and it surfaces the most relevant snippets of information from reference books in these succinct, summarized pages, and they are then directly searchable on Science Direct. They're hyperlinked from key terms in journals and book chapters. And best of all, they're also freely discoverable through search engines such as Google. So Science Direct has topic pages in 20 distinct domains and has over 650,000 hyperlinks to and from the topic pages across all of Science Direct. So this is a platform that's dedicated to discoverability and co-usage. And this is just an illustration of a landing page on for a topic page. Specifically, it has a term, which is appendicitis. It gives a definition of that term, which has been taken from one of our books. It also gives you related terms. So if you wanted to further explore appendicitis and related areas, that is filled in up here on the upper right corner. And then down in the main body of the page includes book chapters where you can delve into the topic of appendicitis even more. And all of these features allow that book content to be seamlessly linked to journal content and making it dramatically more accessible than ever before, and enhancing that co-usage between the two. So due to the use of machine learning and AI aiding in the discoverability of book content, books are now used more widely, harnessed more accurately, and accessed even faster than before. And that's why I truly believe that today is the best time to devote yourself to writing a book. So now it's time to look at what goes into our content acquisition strategy. It's important to understand this strategy to best position your potential ideas for a publication when you submit them to us. So we begin to establish our strategy by looking into current trends and research funding, which helps us identify what content to create for our portfolios. First, we have to start at a very high level, and we view book publishing like investing. We allocate our resources for maximum impact. So publishing high quality book content really depends on the strategy and finding a way to create more value for research and student communities we serve. So Elsevier publishes across a wide array of areas, but a few years ago, many weren't aligned to the strengths of Elsevier overall. So we focus now in areas in which primary research was large and growing, in areas where research was well funded, and in areas in which Elsevier had the strongest journal position, so that we could marry in the two books and journal content. So we call this a deep vertical strategy, and we use data to build and analyze this strategy. The bubbles in this chart represent areas in which we are investing and growing significantly. And not surprisingly, these are also the areas where research funding is focused. So the content we acquire in these areas are aimed to help researchers and students get up to speed with new scientific topics, map out adjacent areas for their interdisciplinary research and study. So after identifying these areas of growth, we categorize them into collections based upon discipline. Here you can see 19 different subject areas of focus, and it's important to know that there are many divisions within Elsevier covering very varying areas, so this isn't everything. This is just for research reference. And now the subject areas are identified, it's time to build the discipline-specific strategy. So we start by using data and analytics from tools like SciVal and Scopus. So we monitor our journal activity and scholarly output, looking closely at article citations and impact by subject areas. We identify impactful authors, institutions, or geographical areas that are doing healthy collaborations and have a lot of research output on those specific topics. We also look at subject area research funding to see what's been funded in the past and what is expected to be funded in the future. We analyze book usage trends to identify patterns, and we track any new innovations that have developed and may influence research or learning. Next, we take all of this data and we use it to analyze our current portfolios of content. This includes identifying any growth areas specific to the portfolio. This may or may not vary from year to year, depending upon trends and investments. We compare our current book offerings with current journal content to identify common trends or departures. And then finally, we identify any book portfolio gaps we may have, and then we flag those up for acquisitions. In doing this, we pull all of this information together and we create our annual strategic plan, which highlights signing topics we want to obtain throughout the year. The information also informs acquisitions editors such as myself and my commissioning plan. And these are lists of topic areas and potential authors that we would like to obtain throughout the year. And the information also helps us determine the profile of the authors we feel would be most successful in the topic areas. And that's based upon, output and their expertise in specific areas. And all of this leads to a well-designed and successful books program. But it's not all about the data. And as I said earlier, we talk to our researchers, customers, and users. So we have a formal program of interviews that we do at least approximately $200 people a year that we interview. And we take that feedback from our customers after interviewing them and talking to them about the challenges, technologies, advances, and trends in their areas. And we compile that information and use it to further inform our plans and really validate our plans. So in some insights that we've gained from past voice of the customer interviews are interdisciplinary is the new norm. I don't think this is probably news to anybody. People are time and resource poor. They don't always have the time or resources to complete all of the research and tasks that they're capable of doing. Visuals are critical for understanding content. And probably most important is trust in the quality is vital. People want to know that sources that are being used or trusted. And we take all of these themes into our acquisition strategy and into the work we do with our authors when developing our titles. So why write a book? We also surveyed our authors and identified their motivations for writing. These are the top 4 benefits authors derive from writing books according to the results of those surveys. They have an interest in the subject and an enjoyment of researching and writing on that topic. They've identified an unmet market need and will fill an important gap in the market. Prestige, they want to gain a reputation and standing in their field. And it's important to note here that book chapters are indexed in Scopus. So book authoring can help raise your H-index. And they also want to provide materials to support their own teaching courses. So creating books that are designed for educational purposes. And there's also a 5th motivation that's not mentioned on the slide, but which runs parallel to career advancement, is the desire to leave a legacy of one's accumulated knowledge. So there are various roles that can be played when it comes to writing books, and some qualities are common to both authors and editors, but there are also some key differences in the responsibilities. What's in common is authors and editors should both be respected experts from the research, medical, and corporate R&D communities. They should be able to identify a market need. They're responsible for planning the scope of the content for the publication. And then they're supported by our staff, and for authored and edited books, they're paid by the publisher in the form of a royalty. Volume editors, they design tables of content and secure chapter authors. So they're not necessarily writing that book content, but instead overseeing the process. They coordinate the science of the book, work with the chapter authors to determine that content, and then they also are required to perform reviews of those chapters. A volume author, or multiple authors, you can have more than one author of a book, they write about 100,000 plus words in about a year. They deliver a well-referenced, detailed explanation of the science and how to apply it. They should have an interdisciplinary expertise and deliver content that is accessible to readers across varied backgrounds. Finally, chapter authors. Now, chapter authors work with volume editors to plan out chapter coverage. They write 7,000 to 10,000 words in about 6 months, and they don't get paid a royalty, but instead generally get a copy of the print book for their efforts. So what makes a premium author editor? The attributes of our premium authors may vary by field and industry. In some areas, certain attributes are more heavily weighted than in others, but acquisitions editors can help you determine the right qualifications needed. But some or all of the following list really help us to define what would be a premium. So things like high quality publication rating, good standing at a well-known institution or company. They should be known for a broad knowledge of the subject area and have the ability to share this knowledge in an interdisciplinary manner. They should have established connections in the field, and this is especially important for editors of a volume who will need to solicit chapter contributions, especially many times the preference for an edited book is to have that also very geographically dispersed chapter authors. They should hold a position in related academic societies, and they should have involvement in key related journal boards. We don't require all of these, but these are ideal things that we look for. And also, Inclusion and Diversity Advisory Board, which I mentioned earlier. So we're also very much dedicated, especially the last several years, to trying to drive greater equity across STEM career paths and our own publishing programs. So we're working to expand our author and editor base, and whether that's from gender or geography, just being a little bit more open to a broader group of authors and editors than previously. Also, we're committed to supporting the efforts by the United Nations to promote sustainable development. For those not familiar with the UN sustainability goals, in 2015, the UN, along with 193 member states, signed an agreement called the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And the plan identified 17 key areas of focus or goals, and these goals made up of 169 targets to deliver by 2030. So Elsevier's parent company RELX is a signatory on the UN Global Compact and has developed a number of freely accessible resources to assist the research community. So at the top left-hand corner is the RELX SDG Resource Center, which hosts the latest content, events, and special issues, which draw content from across the company and from key partners to help promote the work being done in support of the SDGs. In the middle is an example of our SDG graphics, which we started releasing last year, and that show key metrics for research output, impact, and collaboration for specific SDGs. Lastly, on the right-hand corner is a view of our Sustainability Science Hub landing page, which hosts items such as analytical reports to provide a better understanding of sustainability science. It examines scholarly impact and collaboration, explores how data can produce insights into sustainability science, gender, medicine, and several other resource types. In addition, we have our book content that we publish, which is directly related to the SDG goals. We have over 745 books, either published or developed, relating to the keyword sustainability and the SDGs. And here's an illustration of how many of our titles, how some of our titles map to some of the goals. This is not a complete list, and many of our books would apply to more than one goal, but it gives you a sense of our commitment and how we're trying to support those SDG and the progress towards that. So next, we're going to talk about the publishing process itself and what you can expect as an author. And here I'm going to hand it over to Katie.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie. So before I launch into the publishing life cycle, I just want to get a sense of how much experience you might all have already in publishing. So we'll be putting up our third poll now here. So please just let us know if you've ever authored or edited a book or contributed a chapter to a book, or if you've authored or edited a journal. Please just check all that apply in your experience. And we'll just give it a few seconds for everyone to respond.
Yes, thank you, Katie. The poll is there.
Okay. How is it looking, Natalia?
40% of votes is increasing.
Okay.
Maybe we should wait a bit, 5 seconds. I would say 5 seconds more would be okay. Half of the participants already voted.
Okay.
Let's just see. We just give it 5 seconds and then I'll just stop the polling. All right, I'm going to start sharing the results.
Okay, thank you, Natalia.
Yes, sure. There it is. Yes.
Okay. So it looks like probably the majority have not necessarily authored or edited a book yet. Most people selected other, but some of you might have some experience with authoring and editing books in the past. So hopefully this will be new information for most of you, and if not completely new for all of you, there'll be some nuggets of helpful information here for you. So moving along, next slide, please. I just want to take a look at the whole end-to-end process of book publishing for you. So after the acquisitions editors go through the strategy exercise that Chris described, we then begin soliciting book proposals. We're also always happy to review unsolicited book proposals that are sent to us, but regardless of where a proposal comes from, we always evaluate it carefully before determining what to do next. After we receive a book proposal, we will discuss it with the editor, author, possibly refine it before we send it out for peer review. Every proposal gets some reviews, usually it's around a handful of reviews. And then once we receive that review feedback, we share it with the author editor for a chance to respond to that feedback and incorporate any suggestions into their proposal. And then once that feedback has been incorporated, we then submit the proposal to our internal approval process, and the proposal gets approved by our publishing committee. And then we can issue a publishing agreement that both the author and we would sign. And then once the contract is signed, then begins the process of writing or of commissioning chapter authors if it's an edited book. And then once the book is fully written and submitted to our content management group, it then gets transmitted to our production group, which handles all of the whole production and manufacturing process. And then finally, the book is published. And then once it's published, we go through the process of our global distribution on lots of various platforms, and then our sales and marketing process where we promote your books. Next slide. So just looking at the proposal process in a bit more detail, this is the first stage in the development of any new book. And we'll talk in a moment about exactly what will go into a proposal document, but it's also important to note that a high quality proposal really makes the review process go much more quickly. It minimizes the need for multiple rounds of edits. So putting in extra time and thought at the proposal creation stage will really save you time during the review process. I also want to note that many publishers, including Elsevier, do provide a generic book proposal form on their website, but acquisitions editors often have their own version of a proposal form, which might capture any additional details that are of value to their particular publishing group. So it's always a good idea to make contact with the relevant acquisitions editor before you get started. And lastly, I just want to stress that this process is not intended to be daunting. There are a lot of steps, but a good editor is going to guide you through each step of the process. So our role as acquisitions editors is really to support the author and help make a strong book plan and provide plenty of guidance and honest feedback along the way. So you as the author, you're the subject matter expert. Your AE, on the other hand, is the publishing process expert, and we take our responsibilities both to the scientific community and to our team at Elsevier very seriously. So of course, you wouldn't want to work with an editor who would just rubber stamp every proposal. You really want to make sure you're publishing your book alongside prestigious authors and other books that are trusted for their attention to quality. So that's really what this process is intended to achieve. Next slide. So a standard book proposal, regardless of what publisher it's with, will usually cover these 6 key areas. So I'll just go through each one briefly. The title or topic of the book, selecting your topic is really kind of part science and part art. You want it to be broad enough to attract a large audience, but it shouldn't be so broad that it doesn't have a defined audience. You'll want to really carefully select your topic and then find a title that really succinctly summarizes it. The market need, you want to think about what pain point in your reader's work does this book address? So what do you think are the needs of the audience or any key problems that they face in their work, and how exactly your book can help solve those problems for them? Your credentials as the author, of course, presenting your CV is pretty straightforward, but there are also some questions that you should consider when putting together a proposal. So if it's an edited book, does the author lineup that you're proposing offer the appropriate expertise? Does it adequately cover the geographic appeal of the book? What can you as the author offer to the publisher besides just the book itself? So for example, are you especially well known for your work in journals or other book publications? Do you have any society connections that can be useful, or other promotional ideas? Are you active on social media, and can you use that to build interest in your book? All of these things can be mentioned in your proposal if they can help you encourage enthusiasm for the book. In terms of your intended audience and its needs, it's really important to think about how you can tailor your content and the features of your book from the outset of the project to address the needs of your particular audience. So for example, if your readers would really benefit from seeing something like case studies, then how can you work that into your book? In competition, if there are key competing books, it's really helpful to outline their strengths and weaknesses in the proposal very clearly so that our reviewers and customers can see how your book compares with those. So if you're aware of any recent publications or manuscripts that are still in preparation that are likely to compete with your book, be sure to include everything that you know about. And one specific tip that I would give here, a lot of authors write in their proposals that their book is the first of its kind. And I don't recommend saying this, even if it's true that there's nothing else exactly like it. It actually gives publishers pause because they really need to understand which established markets your book is going to sell into. So if you tell them that it's like nothing else, it sort of implies that there's no established market. But instead, if there's really truly no direct competition, it's best to focus on books that are related to your book that might appeal to the same market. And then you can highlight how yours will be different. And even if there's a book, for example, that doesn't entirely cover the topic that your book is covering, but might have a chapter or two on it, that's really helpful to note here as well. And then of course, the specifications and timelines for your manuscript, approximately how long do you think it will be? How many figures do you anticipate using? How long it will take to write? So sort of the nuts and bolts of your project. So on this slide, you can see an example of a typical book proposal form. This is one from Elsevier. Other publishers might have slightly different forms. They might be more or less detailed than this, but these are generally all the items that you should be considering when you're developing your book project. So the title and topic we just talked about, keywords, anything that will help search engines to index your book so readers can find it, whether your book is authored or edited, your author credentials, again, what is it about you that makes you the right person to edit or write this book? The subject matter and market need, and really take time to discuss the need that your book is going to fill in the market. The key features of your book, so what elements of the book will make it unique, make it stand out. Your intended audience and its needs. So again, being very specific about your audience really helps ensure that the content truly serves their needs, and it allows us, the publisher, to make sure that it's positioned appropriately for the marketplace. So as we showed earlier, we have a number of book collections across a variety of topics. So it's very important that we make sure that it's placed in the appropriate collection. The competition, as I just discussed, and then the manuscript specifications. This is important not only so that we can accurately budget for your book, but also so that we can help, it can really help you to determine how exactly you envision your project and the depth of the content that you plan to cover. It's very important to consider that up front. And then the table of contents and list of contributors, these are not necessarily final at this stage, but it is really important to have a draft just to give both the acquisitions editor and the reviewers a much clearer understanding of what's going to be covered in your book and who you're considering for authoring each of the chapters if it's an edited book. Also helpful is a chapter structure. It's very useful to consider something like that at this stage. If the book could make use of a templated structure for the chapters to follow, it's always helpful, whether it's authored or edited. Readers really like to see a similar structure between chapters. And then finally, the timeline. So how long do you think it will take to write or compile? It might help for you to know that on average, a book takes about 12 to 18 months to write. And I just want to stress again that a high quality proposal is going to make the review process go more quickly and minimize the need for a lot of back and forth. So the more effort you put into your proposal up front, the more likely it is to be accepted. So in terms of actually submitting a book proposal, we do have a standard proposal form that you can download from the link on this slide. But as we mentioned previously, it's a good idea to establish contact with your relevant acquisitions editor first, just in case there are any discipline-specific details that they want incorporated. So our recommended approach is to actually send a message to our proposal mailbox, and you can see the email address on this slide here. And inquire about which AE handles your subject area, and then connect with that person, and you can discuss your idea early on in your process. So they might have, a specific form they'd like you to use, or they might just offer some guidance on the market or on refining the topic itself. So at this point, you have a good idea for a book, but how do you find the right publisher? First, we recommend looking at some published books in your field and seeing who those publishers are. You can also discuss with your colleagues to find out where they publish and which publishers they consider to be high profile for your area. You can also scan reference lists of books in your fields to find out where other researchers in your area tend to publish. It's also a really good idea to ask any publishers you're considering about their global reach. So where are their offices located? What is their distribution strategy in developing countries? What percentage of their books are translated? Really get a sense of how global their reach might be. And then lastly, all academic publishers are now producing ebook versions alongside print. So you really want to consider the publisher's electronic strategy. A strong online presence is going to allow your book to be more discoverable and reach a larger audience. So this is really important. So just make sure you're making a strategic choice about where to publish your book. So say you decide to work with Elsevier and your proposal has been reviewed and accepted. At that point, you would move on to the contracting stage. The contract will include the final manuscript due date, although you would have discussed that with the acquisitions editor before then. Sometimes they also include interim deadlines in the contract just to make sure things are kept on track. Also specified in the contract is the copyright, which is held by Elsevier in most cases, as is the case with most publishers. And the contract gives lots of details on author reuse, and we have really reasonable terms for reuse with permission, but all the details will be in your contract. And then very importantly, the author editor royalties are specified for both print and electronic versions, as well as complimentary copies you'll be given and any similar benefits for the chapter authors if it's an edited book. There are lots of other details in the contract, but those are the main terms of the agreement. So once your project is contracted, the writing process can begin. You'll have an editorial project manager assigned to your book. They're there to help with any queries you might have. They'll send author guidelines to help guide you through the process. The most important request that we would make is that you remain conscious of your final delivery date. And if any issues arise that might jeopardize meeting that deadline, just discuss them with your EPM as soon as possible so that a plan can be worked out. Just regular communication is really the key there. And then lastly, most authors will now have the opportunity to work in our new authoring platform, ELSA, and there'll be more on that later in the presentation. And this slide also has a list of some typical elements you'll need to deliver in a manuscript. I won't go through all of them for time, but so we can move on to the next slide. So next is the production stage. So when your manuscript is ready to enter the production process, it's assessed by a production manager, and that person is responsible for seeing your book all the way through the entire production process. They'll contact you with details of the process and the schedule at the beginning of the production process. They'll put the manuscript through copy editing, typesetting, proofreading, and indexing, and then it'll be structured for online publishing. And this is all handled by professional suppliers, and the production manager coordinates each step of that process. And then the electronic proofs of your book will be sent to you about 2 months after you hand over the final manuscript. The overall timing of the whole production process depends on the length and complexity of each individual project, but it's generally about a 3 to 6 month process. After that, your book will appear on Science Direct, as well as a standalone ebook sold on Elsevier's website, as well as any third-party providers such as Amazon. And then in traditional print form as well from all those same providers. So most books are now produced using what's called print on demand. So instead of printing several hundred copies of a book at once and storing them in a warehouse, they're now printed individually as they're purchased, which allows for a much more streamlined process. And then next is the most exciting part, the publication of your book. and marketing. So once it's released, it's time for sales and marketing to go into full swing. In addition to a full support sales team to promote our books, Elsevier has a novel approach to book author marketing. We've moved from product-focused marketing campaigns to more audience-driven marketing campaigns. So we made this move due to the fact that customers use several products over the course of their careers, which makes it much more effective to market all products to an audience instead of just individual products to each audience. And this customer-centric marketing really benefits our book authors because it's focused on driving product usage through the customer's entire life cycle. Our marketing program provides updates both to authors and to the market through the entire publication process. So this includes book release information, book reviews and announcements for any awards received, as well as a quarterly author newsletter that has tips and marketing advice for authors and editors. We also provide event support in the form of booths at major scientific meetings, as well as promotional materials for any smaller meetings. And then finally, we have a very large social media presence. We have a blog called SciTech Connect, which is a great platform for authors and editors to continue sharing content with their audience after book publication. And then we maintain over 22 subject-specific communities across 68 social media accounts, and we reach more than 3.2 million fans on a variety of networks, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and more. And perhaps most importantly, we ensure that abstracting and indexing databases are optimized for search and discovery so that your content is as discoverable as possible and it's given the widest possible reach. So now that we've given a detailed overview of the publishing process, we want to just go through a few critical issues that you should keep in mind. So general publishing ethics are something that every author should have a good understanding of. Elsevier has a really helpful author resource called the Researcher Academy. You can see the URL on the slide here. It provides an in-depth look at various ethical issues in publishing for anyone who'd like to know more about that. You can see here on the slide, there are 5 online modules, and I highly recommend checking these out before authoring a book. And it's also really important to fully understand your role as an author editor in upholding good publication ethics. So it's good to take note of the most common pitfalls so that you can avoid them. So for example, it's up to the author editor of the book to make sure that you're reporting only real and unfabricated data, that you're acknowledging all third-party sources and applying for permission for reuse. You're declaring any conflicts of interest and avoiding duplicate publication. So a chapter or a book can only be published by one publisher. That said, you can submit a book proposal to multiple publishers at one time before it's contracted, but it's best practice to let the publishers know at the time that you're doing that. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a moment about plagiarism just because it's probably the most common pitfall and it can take more forms than you might think. So it's not always just passing off another's paper as your own or claiming results from research that others conducted. It's also considered plagiarism simply to just reprint something without sufficient attribution to the original source. So really the essential thing to remember is that you're legally required to apply for permission for reuse for any material that's not your own. And this slide shows a lot of content that could include, and you can see it's a pretty broad list. So when in doubt, just always apply for permission. But the good news is that we do assign a permission staff member to each project to assist authors with queries. So if you need, questions that you need answered about permissions, you have someone to turn to if you need help. We also provide written guidelines to all authors. We have a request form you can use. We really do everything we can to support this because we know it can be very confusing. Next slide. Also critical to publishing these days is something we call content transformation. And one example of how we do this is our author platform that is called ELSA. So ELSA is an easy to use online content creation platform for authors, editors, and contributors. It offers a variety of benefits. It allows authors to write chapters, edit them, track their overall book and individual chapter progress, and monitor manuscript quality, all within a centralized dashboard. We know it's very frustrating to constantly track and share and save different file versions. So with ELSA, there's built-in version control. You can see when changes were made and easily click to compare different versions. ELSA basically coordinates the entire project and streamlines workflows so you can communicate and collaborate seamlessly with all your publishing partners all in one place. There's no more endless email strings to sort through details. Next slide. So one of the most important benefits of using ELSA is that it facilitates the structuring and tagging of content at the creation stage. So it helps ensure that your content will truly deliver value to your readers because it has the ability to specify and track the various features in your book. So things like methods, case studies, examples, illustrations, whatever it is that make your book useful to your readers. So by making suggestions for tagging and linking and structuring that content, ELSA really gives you the opportunity to create richer content and more discoverable content. So it helps you really boost your content's potential because it makes it more modular and more discoverable. So this has been, next slide, please. This has been a lot of information about the publishing process. So next, we'd just like to show you a concrete example of this process in action by taking a look at a case study. Just to recap the acquisition strategy, we start with data analysis to decide which areas we should acquire content in. We then identify the highest growth areas and the highest performing authors, as well as where there might be gaps in the literature. And then we look for the authors who best fit those targeted areas, making sure to publish content that makes for comprehensive research coverage. So here's an example of how this has worked when we were acquiring content on machine learning for space weather. So as we began expanding the space and planetary science program, we were focusing more and more as a business on interdisciplinary applied content, including machine learning and other new technologies. We noticed there was substantial growth in journal content related to computers and earth science, and space weather began to come up more frequently at conferences. It became clear that this was a very interdisciplinary topic, and we saw that it had strong alignment with journals. So all of this data pointed to the topic as being ripe for book content. So we approached Enrico Camporeal through a networking activity at a conference, and he confirmed that there had been a lot of progress made on utilizing machine learning for addressing space weather. He then brought in Simon Wing and Jay Johnson, and the three of them put together a proposal for an edited book covering the latest developments in a practical way. So we started with data, then made the connection with the leaders in the field to verify our findings and get their expert guidance. Next slide. And of course, the journey didn't end there. The editors were excited to publish a book, but there were other steps that needed to be followed in the approval process. The initial proposal was great quality, but it can always be improved with feedback from the acquisitions editor and from peer scientists from around the world. So once that proposal was refined, it was sent for peer review, the feedback was incorporated in the book's approach, and then it moved to approval by the editorial board. And then at that point, we could extend a contract. That was followed by months of hard work by the editors, contributors, and our content development group until the final manuscript was delivered and handed over to our production team with all the key elements validated, in this case, images and worked problems. Everything was checked for quality and clear of permissions. And then the final result that you can see on the slide is the fruit of all of that labor. Just 18 months after the team submitted their proposal, the book was published. And as with all Elsevier books, the objective is really met when the usage data starts flowing in. In this case, you can see on the top right corner of this slide, usage has been strong. It's consistently above the portfolio average. And then finally, the work of all involved was really rewarded when the book was designated a finalist in the Earth Science category of the Prose Awards, which is an annual award to recognize the very best in professional and scholarly publishing. And moreover, the relationship that was built between the editors and with Elsevier has remained strong, and discussions on another book idea are ongoing. So that is a true success story in our book. And with all this said about our ebooks and authors, we'd just like to highlight the important contributions that Egyptians are making to academic publishing. So the relationship between Egyptian authors and Elsevier has been growing and continues to grow. The chart on the left here shows the tremendous growth that we've shared since 2000. We've seen over 1,096 authors and editors and over 962 Egyptian authored chapters in over 865 books. So again, this is just books. It doesn't include journals. So this is quite a large number. And we would very much like to continue to grow this partnership. You can see here the subject areas where Egyptian authors at Elsevier have had the largest representation. So engineering, immunology and microbiology, medicine and dentistry, agricultural and biological sciences, and chemistry are generally the largest areas. And Egypt has had a really impressive academic presence if you look at the overall research performance across a variety of fields. So in research from 2015 to 2020, Egypt has boasted over 135,000 scholarly articles by over 100,000 authors, and these articles received over 1 million citations. And in the wheel on the right, you can see the many areas of academic publishing that Egyptian authors tackle each year, with substantial contributions in all areas, but in particular in medicine, there in red, engineering in teal, chemistry in dark blue, material science in light blue, and biochemistry in green. We can also look at what specific topics Egyptian academics are publishing about in journals, and that's indicated by this very colorful topic cluster wheel here on the left. This is color-coded by subject area, and the legend is here on the bottom right of the slide. So the reddish shades are medical topics, the green is agricultural and biological sciences, the lighter green is energy, and the blue and purple are mostly physical sciences and math. So each bubble here represents a specific topic, and the bubble size corresponds to the scholarly output of Egypt in the specific topic. So the larger the bubble, the more articles are being published on that topic, indicating the field has a lot of momentum. So I've listed here on the top right the most prominent topics. You can see on the wheel, the big blue circle on the right is the topic of chemical synthesis. The fairly large bubble to the left of that is pharmaceutical preparations, nanoparticles and tablets. Over on the other side of chemical synthesis are absorption and activated carbon, electric power transmission networks, wind power, electric power distribution, as well as photocatalysis and solar cells. Those are the smaller teal circles underneath. So these really show how each of these very diverse areas of research are linked to each other and where most of the activity is concentrated. So these are just some of the tools that we use at Elsevier to first guide our publishing. And we can really use them to measure where our researchers' needs are and then look for authors in those subjects. So as you can see, these topics are often very multidisciplinary, just as each individual researcher works on multidisciplinary research. Next slide. And then here we'd just like to highlight some of the titles that we have published that have either been authored, edited, or contributed to by Egyptian authors and editors. And on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see a list of some of the affiliations that they have hailed from. And as you can see, the content is as vast as the institutions are represented. And we are always working to expand our book authoring in all disciplines and working both with existing and new authors and editors, and with these and new institutions. Next slide. So the main message that we want to make sure is given here, our product strategy, like our corporate strategy and our content strategy that Chris talked about, these are all really led by applying technology to world-class content and ensuring actionable results that are based on our users' needs. And it is our hope that this presentation has given you some insight not only to why books are important, but that there's never been a better time to be involved in writing a book. And we hope that with your new insight into the content acquisition strategy and a fuller understanding of the entire book publishing cycle, that you now feel ready to author or edit a book. And now I'll turn it over to Natalia to field some questions.
Hello. Sorry. Thank you, Katie. Yes, let's go to the questions and answers. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Katie, for this great presentation. We have several questions, especially regarding how are we going to share this material. So it's going to be two ways. Khalid, if you could just confirm about the uploading of the session in our landing page website, please.
So, so the recording
just to confirm that
should be available instantaneously on our Facebook page. So it's being live streamed there. So once we've logged off, you can go to facebook.com/Elsevier Africa. The recording will be available there. It will take us a little bit of time to actually get the recording going on both our YouTube channel and our Elsevier Africa Training Hub as well.
Indeed, great, thank you, Khalid. As well, to let you know that the PDF of this presentation, we are going as well to upload it directly at the Research Academy link, where you are going to download also your certificate. So your certificate of participation will be there. I just copy the link where you can actually download the certificate of participation in the chat, and the workshop code that is needed to be also placed in capital letters. So yeah, it's going to be in any way at the presentation, at the end of the presentation, with the interactive links, and all the interactive links that you have seen right now in the presentation are going to be there on that PDF in this link that I just sent you via the chat. So with no further ado, let's just continue with our questions. So yeah, we still have a bit of time to finish the session of questions answers. So let's start. Dino, would you like to start? Shall I start?
Yes, sure. Sorry, I dropped out there. The internet connection wasn't great. So thank you so much, Christina and Katie. That was fantastic. The first question I would like to ask is, what is the difference between ebook and e-textbook? Does it mean that the ebook is written electronically from the start, but e-textbook is already printed and is published online later? So both their proposals will be different in content, or will be the same? Or I suppose, will it be the same? It means, would you guys like to take that one?
I would say it's the same. It's the same difference. Right, Katie? And correct me if I'm wrong.
I would say we don't. It's possible other publishers might have a distinct product types in that between something called an e-textbook and an ebook. For us, textbook is really just a designation for books that are meant for students primarily, but all of our product types are really treated the same way.
So just on that note, I mean, and this always comes up as well. If a researcher wanted to, or an author wanted to be published, why would they go for an ebook monograph or a textbook or an encyclopedia, major reference work, or even a journal? How would they, make a decision on that?
It would really depend upon the type of content and the market. So if it, as we did in that pyramid illustration, what type of content are you going to put in that book? And that would help for us to decide what type of book it should be. If a book is written and it's exclusively for students, it has questions at the ends of the chapter, it's formatted and structured in a way that you would use it for a course, only a course, and maybe written at a little bit lower level, so that a researcher might not grab it. And some researchers still grab textbooks to use as a reference, but for the most part it's used as a textbook for a course or used within an academic setting. Then it would be listed as a textbook. Otherwise it really just depends upon the structure of the content.
Great. Great answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next question that we have here is, overall, what are the general financial benefits for the authors for publishing?
So in terms of chapter authors, so we use the term author a bit broadly. So author, if it's a single authored book or just authored by a small team of authors, they would receive the same kind of royalty that an editor would receive. So that's a percentage of the book's revenue. And that's different for every program. So I wouldn't want to give, exact expectations there. But essentially a percentage of the book's revenue is shared with authors and editors as a royalty. For chapter authors, if that's what the question is about, typically they receive a copy of the book, as Chris, I think, mentioned in the presentation.
Right. So, just to give some practical advice here or help, assistance, if one of the attendees wanted to go about, printing or publishing with Elsevier, could they contact you both directly, or is there a designated email address or person that they can contact from Elsevier's side?
Yeah, I think Katie in one of the slides has the link to the Author Query Center, where they can actually click on the link, and as Katie recommended, probably your best thing is to reach out to that website, determine who the acquisitions editor would be for that particular book or topic area, and then reach out directly to the acquisitions editor, and they can guide you through that process.
Great. Okay. And we will share this presentation, so all of that information will be in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll just put down the link.
Sure.
For the book author hub.
Perfect.
Thank
where
you.
people can actually go and
great.
download the proposal forms as well.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Khalid.
Thank you, Khalid.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a question from Javed Akhtar. He's asking if the process of publishing a book is the same process as publishing a research paper.
I would say it's quite different. I haven't worked in the journal side of the business, so I don't have a ton of insight into how that process goes, but it's similar in that a book proposal needs to go out for review the same way that a journal article does. However, in most cases, we're getting reviews on just the proposal itself, not on a full manuscript. So yeah, in general, most of that that evaluation work is happening up front at the proposal stage. So that might be one key difference that I would note between the two. Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and I think too, it's looking at the distinction between the type of content that goes into a book versus a journal article, where a journal article, it's new research findings that you're submitting to the community to have that vetted, where a book should be something that's mature, it's already been vetted, and you're compiling all of that information into one easy resource. So that's the distinction between the two. So we wouldn't necessarily be publishing original research as a book, because you'd want to get that feedback first before publishing it out, putting it out there.
Yeah, peer reviewed and cited. But essentially, could you write a journal article or a number of them and a year or two later submit those for a book?
Not the same article, but you could base a book upon
base
articles.
A book upon it, yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Great. And then, you know, for a author to get published, how long does it normally take, and what languages do we specifically publish in?
So our division publishes specifically in English. There are local language partners that I believe we have, but I don't have a lot of information on what other languages they publish in, and they operate as separate businesses within Elsevier. So the group that Chris and I are in, we're publishing exclusively in the English language.
Great. And the period of time, I think you might have spoken to this, but to have a book published, can that vary depending on the information you get from the author, or is there a set timeline?
It usually takes about 2 years from start to finish. You know, for an authored book, you know, depending upon that author's, you know, free time to actually write that. You know, generally we say it takes 12 months to 18 months to actually write the content. And then we do about 6 to 9 months of production time, you know, doing copy editing, page proofs, and so forth, back and forth with the authors. So usually it's about a 2-year commitment from signing the contract to the end.
Great, thank you for that. Natalia, I think if there's anything more from your side, I think we've almost out of time here. If you want to ask the last question.
Yes, thank you, Dee. Just as the last question, is it possible to have the university's conference procedure published in Elsevier or Scopus? Aziza Saleh is asking us.
For proceedings, depending upon the topic area, in material science, we do have a material science proceedings journal that people can submit an applications to publish their proceedings in, but it would depend upon the area in the field.
And more as a journal.
It's a journal. It is not a book.
Oh, okay, it's not an ebook. Okay, all right.
Because again, that's original research, so.
Exactly.
Right.
Perfect.
Oh, fantastic. Ladies, thank you very much to Christina and Catherine for your input today. It was great. We've had a lot of requests for the recording, a lot of requests for the deck that you shared. So I think it's gonna help a lot of aspiring researchers and authors out there. So thank you so much for that. And thank you to everybody who joined here this evening. It was great to host you on our platform. Thank you so much.
And thank you for listening.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you,
Excellent.
Khalid.
Good
It's
night.
great
Thank
to
you,
see
Kelly.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Natalia.
Have a nice day, everybody. Thank you. We hope to
All
see you
right.
soon.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Ciao, ciao. Bye,
Bye.
bye.
Ciao.